Hey. Okay. Oh, Molly, you made it. I was just looking at your email and I'm like, I hope Molly makes it. For all of you who don't know why I'm saying that, it's because YouTube decided to do something really crazy and they would not let me, the link I put up wouldn't work. And so I had to kill the link, go back, make a new link, send that link out to all my Patreon friends who are coming here to the Hangout and hope they see their email. Hopefully you're obsessed about your email, so you always watch your email. Or if you can't find me, you go to your email and then you can find me here. So I'm so glad you're here. So anyway, I feel better now. The video and the audio is working. Well, thank you. Okay, somebody tell me, do I look like I'm in a cave? Because it's so dark on my end, but I just don't know if it's bright or not bright. Am I in a cave? Do I need what's wrong with my lights? Yeah. Somebody tell me if I look like I'm in a cave, because I'm going to add some light because I just feel like I'm in a dark zone here. Hold on a second. Hold on 1 second. Okay. Oh, this one. Oh. Okay, just that. All righty then. Now, can you see me? No. Okay. What? What's the no? No, I'm not in a cave, or no, the video isn't working, or now do I have too much light on me? I'll look like a ghost. Where are we at now? I want to get started so that people who come to view this later don't like fall asleep wondering what the heck I'm doing here. Better. Okay, cool. All right, good. Now I'm hot. This was a stressful moment. I was telling Christine, just as I arrived home, getting ready for the show, I looked into our field and I saw one of our llamas was outside the fence, which is not a good thing. So I had to pull in, I had to chase the llama around. I had to get him back in with the other llamas because my daughter wasn't around. They're her llamas, but still, I love the llamas. So I was racing around trying to save the llamas. So I did that, came back, then YouTube didn't work. So what? You can hear me but not see me? Say what? Does anybody else have that problem like Molly, that they can't see me? Why wouldn't you be able to see me? That's weird. Okay, somebody tell me if you can see me. Everybody else can see me. If it's working for me. Okay, let's get a consensus on this. Molly, you might have to maybe go back out and come back. I see you. I don't know, Molly. Maybe I have to go back out and come back in, but I want you here because I want to talk about the things you send over to me. Annie says it's fine. What's happening to you, Molly? What's happening to you? We'll try again. Yeah, come back in. Please do that because I really want to talk about the cool things that you sent to me, and I want to talk about them. They're neat. So, anyway, try again quickly, Molly. So let me just talk a couple little simple things while Molly's going and coming back, because what I really want to talk about today is the issue of hoaxes, false police reporting, false reports to police, not false police reporting. That would be a different thing. False reports to police, and also what are pranks, hoaxes, and false reports to police. What are all those things, and how do they affect our criminal justice system and our police work and our media and all of that? Because there's so many different weird versions of it that I think are just really fascinating. Oh, Molly's back and now she can see and hear me. Yay. Okay. Before I start, somebody wants to know whether I'm going to do anything about, how do I pronounce her name? Ghislaine Maxwell? Because I always kind of screw that up. Is that Ghislaine Maxwell? Am I going to talk about the court case? And the answer is yes, because I did something on Epstein already and what the issues are, and I found him guilty as he was charged originally, way back when, but nothing much happened. And then he would have been charged in the future had he not suddenly ended up dead in his cell. And what is the issue of his lady friend? And I just want to tell you this right up front. Two things about that case. First of all, she's trying to say, and other people are trying to say for her, oh, she didn't know. She had no clue what was going on. She didn't help him in any way. Okay, that's like a cartel wife. You know, you got a cartel boss, and you live on this compound. You've got 14 guys outside with machine guns surrounding your compound. The police are after you, and you have like $10 million, and you can go shopping every week with $1 million of it. And you're like, I thought my husband, I thought he worked as a carpenter. No, you didn't. You knew exactly what he was doing. So Ms. Maxwell, I'm sure she knew exactly what was going on with Epstein. I don't buy it for a minute that she was just totally ignorant, and she was just his sort of weird girlfriend. And I look at it like this. I think he was the king. You know, if you got a chessboard like that one behind me, he's the king. He doesn't do a lot, but he is the big dude. And so the queen moves all the pieces around for the king to protect him and to help him. That's what I think was going on. So I'll be talking about that more because I think it's really going to be a fascinating case. And the second thing I want to say about that case, because people are misunderstanding this and it drives me crazy. There is no evidence of pedophilia. This is, so many people say, oh my God, he's a pedophile. Epstein's a pedophile. Everybody who was ever on his plane and went to his island is a pedophile. Pedophilia has nothing to do with this case. Pedophilia is adults who like little children before puberty, little children, not teenage girls. I'm not saying it's right to like teenage girls, but you know, in many parts of the world, teenage girls get married at 14, 15, 16, and even in US history, they got married. So they're not children. We call them children today, as far as, you know, maybe mentally, they're not full adults, but they're not little children either. So there's girls of a certain age who are very sexually active. Girls of a certain age who, for example, run away from home and get into prostitution. Not saying this should be, not saying they're not being taken advantage of, but a lot of the girls, 16 years old, 15 years old, 17 years old, when the men see them, they shouldn't be getting prostitutes, but they're just thinking them as young girls, you know, not necessarily children, just really well, you know, good shape, young women. And as a matter of fact, there's some porn sites that are called barely legal. And the reason they're called barely legal is because they want the guys coming to the sites to, they are legal, they're over 18, but they want guys to think of them as, oh, they could be slightly younger. In other words, teens, because they're barely legal. And it excites the men because they're fresh meat, essentially. Fresh. They haven't been overused. Their bodies are in great shape. They haven't started to sink and get fat. You know, they're just what kind of a lot of guys like, you know. So let's just be reasonable about that. That's the way they think. So I think what we have here is a case of, I'm going to go into this later about the trafficking issue of girls who are not barely legal at all. They were actually not legal. They were under legal, but they weren't children. So it's not pedophilia. It's girls who are under the age of 18 who should not have been brought in. How many of the people who maybe interacted with those girls knew they were under 18 is questionable. But I would believe Epstein and his queen would know. And that's where the crime lies. All right, so that's what I'm going to say about that. Okay, one other thing I want to talk about, it's just kind of weird. The Cleo Smith thing, and Cleo Smith, the little girl who went missing in Australia. It's been about, I don't know, has it been 3 or 4 weeks now? It's odd. All talk about that case just stopped dead. And many people are curious about it because this really weird dude who loved dolls ended up with her. But there was some woman who was also involved. And people are like, who the heck was that woman? And some people are even saying, well, sure the parents aren't behind this, or one of the parents, or somebody, you know. I'm not saying they are. I'm just saying it's interesting that the news has stopped. So we're not quite sure exactly how she was found, why she was taken, how she was taken, and who was involved. Especially this mystery woman who supposedly came over and like took care of the little girl, like, you know, brushed her hair and all that kind of stuff. Apparently the dude who loved little dolls didn't want to actually take care of the little doll, so he got somebody else to do it. But it's a weird case, and I'm just curious because all the information just stopped, and I'm curious of why that is. I'm looking forward to finding out. And sometimes I'm not. I'm like, the media needs to get out of this, but I'm actually curious in this case because it stopped so abruptly. So I'm just curious what we're going to see. So anyway, that's my thoughts on kind of the news of the day. Now to the topic of the day. All right, it's about this is a Jussie Smollett. I did a little thing on Jussie Smollett profiling in the court, and Jussie Smollett, like one of the worst hoaxers of all time, just dreadful. And it's kind of funny because he's coming in now, and his lawyers are going to say, it was truly, it did happen to him. He was really attacked. It was a racist and homophobic attack. And it was so badly done. There's so much evidence leading toward the fact that he hired the two Nigerian brothers, and they went out and then they bought materials for the crime. And I mean, it's just it's laughably bad. And some people ask, well, if he wanted to fake this thing, why would it be so bad? I'm going to tell you why. Because some people aren't all that bright, and especially if you've never committed a crime and you are only watching a few things on, on television and stuff, you get an idea how you're going to fake some crime. This usually happens when, like, let's say a husband kills his wife and then he tries to make it look like a serial homicide, a serial killer. And when the detectives get there, they're like, something's just not right about this picture. It's weird. And so a lot of times you think but you don't really know because you've never really done it before. So you're making these attempts, but not too bright. And so I would hope that he's going to get convicted. And in my opinion, because it was a hoax that did a number of things, took up a lot of police manpower and money, because it affected the community by telling the community that there was massive racism at that point in time. It was not a nice thing to do. And some people ask, well, why would he do that? He was already a movie star. Well, he was in television, but apparently is having a few troubles with his career. And if he has a narcissistic personality disorder, which I'm going to say he does, it's all about him, and he wants more and more and more and more and more. And he wasn't getting enough. He thought, hey, if I do this, I could get a lot of attention and a lot of sympathy because A, I'm gay, and B, I'm Black. So I'll put those two together, and I will get everybody to feel sorry for me. My name will rise high. My face will be everywhere. And when your name and face is everywhere, guess what you get? Big contracts. So I can't say Jussie was stupid in the concept that the way the world works, the way Hollywood, the media works, they love people whose name is in the news, So everybody gets to know Jussie even more and feels sorry for him. He gets a new role. He gets a big contract. Not a bad attempt, but he botched it ridiculously bad. He was just sadly maybe good that he sucked at what he did. So anyway, hi Lisa, you're here. That is grand. Okay, so that's my Jussie Smollett thing. But this is what started my thinking about the issue of hoaxes, because the three things, let me say them again: a prank, a hoax, a false report to the police. These three things can have different meanings and different effects on the public and effects on our police, and what our communities have to put into police work. So these things are very important in different ways. And first of all, first I want to talk about what is the difference between a prank and a hoax. And I thought I looked this up. I found this one thing on Google, which I thought was a really good definition. And it's really tricky because the line between a prank and a hoax is a little blurry, and it's not absolute. But let me go with this one. A hoax is something that encapsulates the idea of deception typically on a large group of people. In other words, you don't hoax two people. You hoax a large community. And that is very important because a hoax does affect them. It gets into the media and it affects the response by the police and other people, maybe search teams. If you're saying somebody has disappeared, then search teams come into it. Also, the hoax can be, you could be doing a GoFundMe thing where you're asking money from the public. That's very important. So hoax encompasses a lot of people. I think that's a very good point. Often there is no element of humor in the hoax. And I'm going to point out one in a minute that was sent to me by Molly that does have humor in it. So a hoax can be humorous, but a lot of times it isn't humorous. It's actually something that's supposed to pull at your heartstrings and make you angry even. And that, again, affects how the police handle things and what goes on. A hoax, instead, the principal aim is to confuse or scare. A hoax normally has long-term consequences and mysteries that are never resolved. Well, now they're pointing out things like, in this particular case, they're saying legends like the Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, Roswell, and those kind of hoaxes. So now we're going to have two different hoax areas. The hoax that is weird stuff, Bigfoot. Okay. Oh my God, took a picture of Bigfoot. Okay. That is just more of an imagination thing. But there are hoaxes that are very detrimental to the community. And that is the kind of hoax that I'm concerned about. I don't care about these silly things. Now, a prank, this is important. A prank, on the other hand, describes, often lighthearted, a trick played on someone or a small group of people, typically involving some kind of physical humor intended to temporarily confuse or scare someone. However, a prank can take on a darker sense of humor too. A good example of the spectrum of darkness would be convincing a friend their dog has died versus pretending to be a statue and jumping out at people. I love this description. It's really good. So when we're looking at pranks, a prank is not intended to be a nationwide thing or a worldwide thing. It's not intended to get money. It's not intended to get a massive media attention. It's just for fun in a small group. Now, pranks are interesting because a prank that is humorous and doesn't hurt the other person. I like the concept of a statue. So you're like this, and all of a sudden you go, okay. Most of the time, unless you're like somebody's going to have a heart attack, it's going to be funny. You're going to go, oh my God, and you're going to think that's amusing. And that's not too mean. But that thing about, let's pretend your dog is dead is not okay. That's not cool. And so there's these two groups of pranks. And this is what I want to talk about with personality disorders. If you just have a fun prank, the point of a fun prank is that the person you're pranking, you still have empathy for. You wouldn't want to hurt them. You wouldn't want to make them sad. You wouldn't want to scare them in a horrible way. You wouldn't want to, it has to be something that they're going to laugh about and think is funny. So you have empathy for that person. That means you do not have a personality disorder. You're not a narcissistic personality disorder or a psychopath, because you're just going to have fun and they're going to think it's fun. Then you get the other thing, which is dark, so dark that you're like, you play a prank on somebody and it's not funny. It's not funny. The other person is not amused. They're hurt by it. And maybe disastrously hurt by it, terribly sad, or that's what kind of person does that? I just want to ask you, what kind of person does that? Somebody who's mean, somebody who has no empathy for the other side, somebody who's going to carry this past the point of funny. And just for a good example, I'm going to go over to this side because I do have a good example, and it's a personal one. And so this is the example. So one night about midnight, I have a son who's 38 years old, and he's not married. And I always worked very hard with him to make sure that he understands the concept of not bringing children into the world without a mother and a father who are together, who care, preferably married. Just don't bring kids into the world willy-nilly, because if you hook up with some girl and you get her pregnant, and you don't know about her boyfriends that you're not with her, and then these weird boyfriends come in and you don't know what's happening to your child. I I tried to drill that home with my kids. So anyway, about midnight one night, my son calls up, and and I'm like, why is he calling me at midnight? Because that's kind of weird. And he goes, hi, Mom. I just, I've been trying to not call you about this. I was a little worried about what you think. And I'm like, okay, what's up? And he goes, well, I just got to tell you something. I hope you're not going to get too mad because, I know you've really, tried to drill this into my head. But anyway, I just got to let you know I'm going to be a father. I'm like, okay. Dang, I'm like, all right. I'm like, really? Like, you forgot my advice, huh? And he goes, Ma, I'm 38. It's like, I've been very careful all these years, but, sometimes it just doesn't go well. And I'm like, okay, all right. Okay. So I said, and who's the girl? He goes, well, I'm going to have a son. I'm thinking, she's already done the sonogram. Damn. I'm like, oh, so you're going to have a son, huh? So it's already that far along. Okay. And then all of a sudden he bursts into laughter. And I hear this hysterical laughing behind him. I'm like, what the? And he comes back and said, no, Ma. And apparently it was a drinking game. And he pulled this ball out of this thing that said, tell your mother you got a girl pregnant. And I'm like, I'm so going to get you for this. I'm so going to get you. Now, this was a prank because he knew that after he called me and freaked me out for 3 seconds, he was going to tell me the truth. So it wasn't going to go on. And so I did find it funny. I did. And so I don't think he had no empathy for me. And I'm like, and he was like, well, thank you for being so nice, Ma, about it. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, I'm so going to get you for this. So then the poor guy had to worry that when was I going to get him for this, right? And so he was waiting next week, nothing happened. Next week, nothing happened. If you're going to get somebody back on a prank and you're going to put a prank on them, you got to let a lot of time go by. I think it was 3 months. 3 months goes by. I was planning this stuff. So one day we had lunch together. Finally, after 3 months, he's very busy. And so we had lunch together. I invited him for lunch and we're sitting there at lunch. And I said to him, I said, oh, it's a great lunch. And I said, I have something I need to tell you. And I said, I'm going to be moving from where I'm living and I'm in a mother-in-law house next to my daughter. So I said, I don't want to tell you, I don't want to get into why I need to move, but I'm going to look for an apartment and I just need a place to stay temporarily. So I just wondered if it was okay if I come and stay at your house for a couple weeks or something, 3 weeks. And I'm waiting for his response because he lives there, but he rents rooms. And I'm thinking he's a dude with all dudes in the house. I'm thinking he's going to come back and go, Mom, I don't have room. But he came back, my wonderful son. And he said, of course, Mom, you can stay at my house. No, you can stay. I have a pull-out couch. You can stay there. And then he said, or I'll just give you my room. And I'm like, this is really actually a pretty good son. And I was very oh my God. He's a great son. And after he said, I could come, I said, that's really nice. I said, oh, I have one more thing for you. And I reached into my purse and I pulled out a table tennis ball, which I had written on. And I put it in his face and I went, tell your son you're moving in. And he went, you didn't. And I'm like, yeah, I did. Gotcha. Got him back. Martin says, let me get this. Martin says, revenge is a dish best served cold. Yes, I was very proud of myself because I really bided my time. But that's a prank. And his was done fairly lighthearted toward me, and mine was fairly lighthearted toward him. Neither one of us was trying to hurt each other. We both loved each other. That's a good prank. But there are pranks that people do that are not so lighthearted, that come with a narcissistic personality disorder where I like to get attention. I like to see you suffer. I like to get over on you. And I don't have any empathy for you. Those are the kind of pranks that are kind of nasty. And those are the pranks that can go wrong. And I thought I think it was, let me see who sent me over this one. This was was it the swatting prank? What is it? Oh, okay. So this one, Molly, you sent over to me was a swatting prank. And this is where a prank can go wrong. Let me see where the swatting prank is. This was called the 2017 Wichita swatting. It basically began as an online dispute between a couple of gamers. And what happened was that they had this argument, and then one of them threatened to have the other one swatted. And this guy responded by giving him a false address for his residence, one that was occupied by an uninvolved person. Then the guy asked to make a fraudulent call and to initiate the swatting. Wichita police responded to the address, and unfortunately, the dude that was there came out and he ended up getting shot and killed. This swatting had a really, really bad ending because a bunch of jerks without a lot of decency and a lot of concern decided they wanted to punk each other in a way that was mean and also ended up involving the police. So this was a false police report that was made. And this is where the false police report problem comes in. Now, what happened to these guys? The guy, Barris, who was involved in this, pled guilty to involuntary manslaughter and to many other charges from unrelated incidents that he was wanted for. The dude had other issues. So apparently it was kind of a criminal. In 2019, he was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. Wow. Viner, the other dude, was sentenced to 2 years community service and 15 months imprisonment for his involvement. And another guy got 2 years probation. So the officer ended up shooting the poor guy that got in the middle of this mess. He did not get charged for the death, and I won't get into that. But this was an interesting case of swatting, which is a very nasty prank going wrong. So pranks can be funny, but they can be mean. And this particular prank wasn't meant to involve the community. It was just they were attacking each other. So this is a very small thing, but it turned out badly because of the false police report. And so some people, like, let's say, for example, I was talking about false reporting from women who claim they've been raped who weren't. That is not really a hoax, and it's not a prank either. What some women do, and it's very bad for women who are reporting real rape, is they'll do a false report for two reasons. One is that they're trying to cover up what they did, which is maybe sleep with their husband's best friend, and they know the husband's going to find out, so then they claim the guy raped them. Or sometimes girls, like, they have like they're supposed to be home at 1 o'clock by 1 o'clock in the morning, and then they end up showing up at 5, and they don't want to tell their parents that they broke their curfew and on purpose or whatever, and then they say, "Oh my God, it was because I was raped," and then they blame some guy. That's one. They're trying to get out of trouble. This is not a hoax. It's a false report to the police in order to save their own butts. Bad thing, very bad thing. And I think it should come with charges, because if you accuse somebody of raping you and they didn't do it, maybe you ought to get the same. Somebody pointed this out to me. I thought, not bad. Maybe you ought to get the same amount of time they would have gotten if they were actually convicted of raping you. Maybe that will stop you from being a lying, whatever, POS. And then there's a second version, which it's interesting how often this happens, where a girl voluntarily goes to bed with a dude, and then she like in the morning, she's like, "Oh man, did I have sex with you? Oh, that's embarrassing. Okay, he raped me," because they don't want to admit to having sex with somebody they didn't think was hot. And again, it's a false report, and it can be very damaging to the guy who they had consensual sex, and yet he's now being charged with rape. Now, I just want to point out that, I have a daughter and 2 sons. And sometimes people who don't have any sons are really lean heavy on the female side, saying, well, we should believe all women, and these guys are all bad guys. Well, if you had a couple sons, you'd be worried about them being accused of a rape that they didn't commit. My advice to both sides of this is my advice. I put this in my book. Where is my book? No, there's How to Save Your Daughter's Life. And somebody told me I need to write How to Save Your Son's Life, and I should, but I just haven't had time. So that one, in my opinion, one of the problems we have in our very lenient and open society is that people want to have sex with just as a sport, as amusement, as fun, as excitement, thrills, whatever. They just want to have sex. Feels good. Let's do it. But that means they go with people they do not know. So in other words, in the old days, if you were dating, maybe dating someone or being courted, you were, like the family was watching you. By the time you were in eventually be in a relationship. You either be married and then you have sex, or you'd be at least in a engagement situation when you had sex, at least be in a relationship before you had sex. So you had a trust level with that person, not somebody who just went to their apartment and you hardly knew the person's name. I mean, the guy's like, I think her name was Jane. And the woman's like, I think his name was James. But neither of them, one of them knows the last name. So they end up having sex half the time drunk off their asses. And a lot of times nobody knows exactly what happened. The guy's so drunk, he thought the girl was into it. She was so drunk, she didn't know she said yes. I mean, there are all kinds of weird stuff that happens, but there's not a trust factor because you don't know the other person very well. So you go to their house and then something happens, a sexual thing happens, and then some people are mad about it. Maybe you just go home and say, well, I went there, so, whatever. But sometimes you're just, I don't think I said yes. I think you did. I don't know. Nobody knows. It's he said, she said, he said, she said, and it's hard to take to court. So the police hear these stories and they're like, we ain't got proof of nothing. So in my opinion, ladies and gentlemen, stop going to bed with people you do not know that you picked up in a bar. Stop doing that. Start actually having a relationship. And then by the time you have sex, you can trust each other. Even if you've had a few glasses of wine, it's not going to be, oh, yeah, nobody knows what's happening. That's just my opinion on that. So anyway, okay, got to itch my nose. Hold on a second. Yeah, where's my nose itching? Okay, so that is the false reporting thing I wanted to point out on that. Now let's go to hoaxes, because hoaxes are another whole issue. And Molly sent me a really funny hoax, which I really, really liked. And this one, oh my God. This was okay, hold on, I got to sneeze. Hold on a second. If you ever heard me sneeze, I sneeze at least like many times. And you have to start counting. No, I'm not going to do it because I'm on air. Well, normally I sneeze like 9 times and I've gotten up to 12, but I never hit 13. So I think if I hit 13, I'll be dead. So, but usually I sneeze like over and over and over and over again and people just start counting. So only one because I'm on air and I guess I'm controlling myself. Okay. Now, this is what I call, there's hoaxes that are, let's see if I can find it. Oh my God, where'd it go? Okay, hold on a second. Because this is a funny hoax and it's not something. Oh, I just so hate when things disappear. Okay, wait a minute. I got to put this back in here because it has disappeared. So I'm going to put hoax. I'm going to put dreadnought. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing this right, but okay. This was just a really cool, this was considered a prank. And I think because it was not done with evil intentions, this is a prank pulled by Horace Day, somebody in 1910. Cole tricked the Royal Navy, and this is UK, the British Royal Navy. If you're in the UK, because I'm doing the show for UK people so they can actually come here, you can just mock me and tell me I'm saying everything wrong and I'm completely I don't know what I'm talking about. He tricked the Royal Navy into showing their flagship, the battleship HMS Dreadnought, to a fake delegation of Abyssinian royals. Abyssinian, by the way, in case you don't know, is actually what they used to call Ethiopia, Abyssinia. So the Ethiopians. And what they did was they basically put on blackface. And now this is 1910, before this would have become a huge issue. But you notice when they put on blackface to present themselves to the Navy as royals, they didn't try to be Zulus. Because if you were trying to be Zulus, you would have probably a different body build, and you would have much more different features. But a lot of the Ethiopians have Caucasian features. So if you put blackface on, you could kind of get away with it, And so they picked Ethiopia because it works. And so they went dressed up. They put on kind of turban things, and they actually kind of looked at the part. And they went there, and it was pretty bad. So anyway, they went there and they were welcome because somehow when the information went through that they were going to do that, these royals were coming, nobody did their due diligence and vetted them very well. And so consequently, they ended up with the ship. So then during the actual hoax, this is really funny. So they're showing them around the ship. But what made me laugh was, let me see if I can find the thing that made me really laugh about this, which was really pretty funny. Well, where was it? Okay. They couldn't eat because of their makeup would run or something, so they couldn't eat anything while they were there. But they had jewelry and everything, and so they ended up going there, and they oh, this is one thing that made me really laugh. The Navy welcomed the princes with an honor guard. An Abyssinian flag was not found. So the Navy proceeded to use that of Zanzibar and to play Zanzibar's national anthem. And if I'm correct, Zanzibar is about Tanzania. But what's funny about this is, can you imagine, let's say a delegation from the UK showed up in, let's say, I'm going to say someplace that, what the British weren't in, like, let's say, Cameroon, because that's French. Okay. So they showed up in Cameroon and they're like, we don't know what a British flag looks like, and we don't have any of those around, and we don't know what their song is. Let's throw out the German flag and play the German national anthem. So, at any rate, didn't go. It was pretty funny. It was a pretty ridiculous hoax. And then they walked around saying, wait a minute, I got to think that the thing that they walked around saying, oh, bunga bunga. Every time something was exciting, they said, bunga bunga, which they just made up. And it kind of reminds me of when I was in South India. I was the language in the area I was at, that was Telugu, and I know some Hindi, but I don't know any Telugu. And so the only thing I learned was the word Bagundi, which is hopefully pronounced correctly, which is wonderful or delicious. So every time I had dinner, I could say, oh, Bagundi. So, but these guys didn't even have a real word, so they just said bunga bunga. Now, that's pretty funny. Now, obviously, it wasn't funny for the Royal Navy, and they were highly embarrassed, and maybe they should have been, because if you don't do due diligence, it's on you. But that's a funny hoax, a funny hoax. And, but there's things that aren't so funny, hoaxes that are not amusing. And I'm going to get to these now, these really horrible, horrible hoaxes, which cost police a lot, it cost the emotions a lot. Let's start with one that's just emotional, and it had nothing to do with the police, but involves a person who has a psychiatric disorder, and I'm going to say massive narcissism. And this one was brought to me by Karen, who said she wanted to know my thoughts on Tania Head. And that wasn't her real name, by the way. Tania Head. I don't know how many of you heard of this. I had never heard of this case, and I think it's just bizarre. Tania Head, there is a great movie. It's a documentary. I found it on Prime Video for free, so that was cool. I didn't have to pay for it for once. Okay, let me find it. Tania Head. Where's the basics on her? Here we go again. But the woman that wasn't there was the name of the documentary. She claimed, Tania, I think I don't know if it's Tanya or Tania. I can't remember. Maybe I'm just saying that wrong. Ms. Head, not her real name. She claimed that she was one of the victims of 9/11. And she told this tragic story to these group of survivors that she was in the buildings at the time, and she saw her friends. I think she said she was with Merrill Lynch, which didn't even have offices in the building, mind you. But anyway, she said she was in the building at the time, and she saw her friends and coworkers just get killed. And she herself, she suffered terrible burns, and her arm was severed to the point where it was just hanging from some flesh. And she managed to get out of the building, and this firefighter saved her. And her boyfriend, or fiance, her fiance, who was in the building, he died in the 9/11 thing. He died. And she hung out with this group of survivors, and she actually started working with them. She actually became the president of the group eventually, because they all thought her story was so tragic. And for many people, her story was even more tragic, even for the survivors, more tragic than theirs, because not only did she suffer, she was actually there seeing people die in front of her, and she almost died, and she had terrible damage, and her fiance died. Well, It's a long story. I'm not going to do the whole thing. Go watch that movie. The woman that wasn't there. Apparently, she did this. She was with this group for like, I think it was almost 6 years. And before anybody figured out, it's actually the New York Times, who has in the past done good investigative reporting, not so much these days, but they used to do great investigative reporting. And apparently something rang in this guy's head. He's like, I don't think I believe this crap. Something's fishy about this woman's story. So he wanted to talk to her, and she kept hiding and hiding and hiding from him. Oh, for good reason, because her fiance who died in the building and the towers, she was not his fiance. She claimed, she gave this story about how wonderful he was and how they had this, they went to Hawaii and they did this like Hawaiian wedding, and he was just so wonderful. They went through the whole thing. That actually never happened. There were no pictures of the wedding with him in it. There were never any pictures of him. And she even claimed later that she got a lawyer and a judge after he died, to marry them so she could be his wife and widow at the same time. I mean, then the people were finally people made contacts to people who knew this man who legitimately died in 9/11, and turned out that no one ever heard of her. Family never heard of her. She was never his fiance. She just picked his name out and made herself the fiance of this guy. And then it turned out that, quite frankly, she was never actually even in the building. Not at all. She was actually in Spain at the time, in Barcelona, where she grew up as a fairly wealthy young woman. She had a bunch of brothers, and she was the only daughter, and she went to school there. She got her college degree, her MBA there. And apparently during 9/11, she was like hanging out in Spain. She wasn't even in the United States. But she always loved the United States and wanted to be an American citizen. And so she came over and made these claims. And then, she wasn't making money. So that wasn't the issue. She wanted the attention, and she got Julie says 6 years. That's a long time to keep something going. She lived and breathed this fantasy she had created for herself. I mean, it was an incredible fantasy, and she kept adding to it. And one of the problems people have over time is that you add to the fantasy to the point where a few people start going, I don't think that makes sense. In other words, you get too big for your britches and you overdo it. I think that's what got her eventually. She just went too far. And so she was found out. And interesting enough, I thought was a funny comment in the documentary. Her ex-friends probably now, because nobody wants to be her friend anymore. They said that she had her arm severed in an auto accident, but she was in an auto accident. This is one story with her friends, and there was this crash, and her friends were fine, but she had her arm severed and it flew out the car window. But they found the arm and were able to reattach it. How lucky! And then somebody else came out later in the show, and they went, "Well, I heard it was from a horseback riding incident." I'm going to say maybe neither of those things even happened. Maybe her arm was never severed. Maybe she had a scar on her arm from something else. And then she made up this ridiculous story. She was a smart woman. There's no question about that. She grew up riding horses. She had money. She had friends. But she was, and I want to get people, please do not all get on me about fat shaming. Because this is people have trouble understanding how to understand people, and that you're not shaming them for understanding them. She grew up very, very overweight. And I'm looking at her pictures, and she's chunky, shall we say. And sometimes when people grow up overweight, and she was like her family doted on her, probably maybe more so than necessary. And sometimes when that happens, and I've seen this happen with psychopaths as well. I don't know what her personality disorder is. I'm going to say severe narcissism. She's got a massive narcissistic personality problem. Whether she's a psychopath or not, we could go there. But her family, sometimes when families they put too much into a child and let them get away with everything and give them too much, they become very self-centered and very narcissistic, and then they start manipulating people. And apparently she got into massive manipulation when it came down to the 9/11 thing. I'm going to say she manipulated people prior to that, with maybe the story about how her arm got messed up. But there wasn't a lot of animosity toward her from back then. And my guess is, and I'm going to say this because this is just sort of the way things work sometimes, when a girl is overweight, she's the girl you want to be your best friend. She's not a threat. Yeah, you're the one with the hot figure. You're the one who gets the guys, and she's your Robin to your Batman, because you're not worried about them going for her. And she is always annoyed by that because it sucks to be somebody who doesn't get that kind of attention. So a lot of times, what girls who are in that situation will do, I call it the cheerleader's best friend syndrome. You can't be the cheerleader, so you be the best friend. And what that means is that you hook onto them so you get some of their glory and the things that they get to do. You get invited all these places because you're not a threat. And oftentimes you handle things, you manage and you manipulate things because, oh, she's always so good at throwing a party. She's really great. She can do this. She can do that. And she's not a threat. But, after you've done that for years, sometimes you get tired of being Robin and not Batman. So I think at some point she decided, this is not enough for me. I'm tired of playing second fiddle. If I can go over and claim I'm part of I was a victim in 9/11, I get to be center stage. And she accomplished it. And because people felt so sorry for her, because she was such a victim, just what a horrible, horrible thing she had to go through. Because more than anybody else, she was a victim and her fiance died. So And so people really felt sorry for her. And at the same time, she's good at doing things. So she was making that organization function. She was getting money for the organization. She was getting attention for the organization. She did a lot of good. And even after people found out that she was a big fat liar and had just abused all of them, they were like, but she did a lot of good for the organization. So they had trouble hating her. A lot of them forgave her and said, well, I guess she must have had severe problems. Yeah, I would say so. And now then she disappeared, and apparently she is still somewhere. She's living with her mom, I think. She reappeared like 3 years later. Somebody got a photo of her. But what a great documentary. So go. I will put that below when I put this live. It's called The Woman Who Wasn't There. And really interesting documentary, really well done. And she speaks for herself in a great portion of this documentary. And so you'll see her in action. It's fascinating. Now, she wasn't after money. She was after attention. And that did a lot of harm to people. It did, oddly, some good for the organization itself, but it did a lot of harm to people who felt like, after all of that, you could lie about this. I went through this tragedy. I am a real victim of this tragedy, and you pretended to be a victim. That like felt like a knife through the heart to many of those people. Really, really a horrifying thing that she did to them. And really, really horrifyingly sad. She did not involve the police, and she did not make money. She wasn't getting money from the public, so she wasn't one of those. But still, a pretty horrific thing to do. So this was not police involved, but a very, very sad case. So now, what about cases that do end up involving the police? Well, my favorite example of this is the kidnapping of Shannon Matthews. Anybody who's followed the Madeleine McCann case for years is familiar with the Shannon Matthews case, because most people are pretty sure that the mother of Shannon Matthews got the idea of her going missing from the Madeleine McCann case. Because, all right, if you aren't familiar, okay, so Madeleine McCann was a little girl that went missing in Portugal. She was almost 4, and once she went missing and has never been found, the parents started a fund to find Madeleine. That was the fund. They made buku money off of that fund, like massive amount of money off of that fund. And they hired a bunch of shady detectives to do some shady detective work, which made no sense. And they paid some bills, and God knows what happened to the rest of the money because it's not highly accounted for. So, when you see that if your child goes missing, man, can I make a lot of money? So the case of Shannon Matthews, to me, is a very big hoax case, based on something that actually didn't happen. So she was a 9-year-old girl. It was in 2008. She was reported missing in Dewsbury, West Yorkshire, England. The search for her became a major missing person police operation. And here's where the problem of false reporting to the police comes in. They reported to the police their child went missing. And this then involved massive amounts of manpower and money. And this is where I get really, really ticked off. Martin does say McCann Ramsey cases have hoax elements to them. Yes, that too. Also the JonBenet Ramsey case. Those all have hoax aspects, right? And the issue with McCann's is that depending on what you believe, okay. Now let me straighten this out before I go on with Shannon Matthews. One of two things happened to Madeleine McCann. Either she was abducted out of the vacation flat in Portugal, in Praia da Luz, Portugal, or she wasn't. There either was an abduction or there wasn't. For the people who believe there was an abduction, then it would not be a hoax to set up a fund to get money to find her. The parents will be innocent. The fund is legitimate. Nothing wrong with it. Although their accounting is very, very shabby. Let's say pretty much non-existent. So they have an issue regardless of whether Madeleine was abducted or not. Then you have those who believe Madeleine McCann was never abducted. I happen to lean on the side of I have not found proof of abduction. And I wrote a book, which you can find not on Amazon because it was pulled during a dispute by the McCanns and Amazon over whether I was libeling somebody, which I wasn't. You can find that book at Smashwords or Kobo. What's the name of it? Kobo or Apple or any of those other places. Barnes and Noble even. It's online. It's a download for $2.99. So it's not something you can't buy it in book form. In paper form. You have to download it. It's called Profile of the Disappearance of Madeleine McCann, and I go through all the evidence that supports the lack of an abduction, that supports that the McCann's involvement in what happened to the daughter is likely. Okay, so in that case, if Madeleine McCann died in the apartment, I believe that evidence supports an accident, and her body was removed by people who she knew, the parents, and hidden, then from that moment on, it's a hoax. That moment on, the fund is a hoax. Now, this is a save your butt type of situation, though. It's a little bit less than what I call a real hoax, because when a parent accidentally or purposely kills their child, or a boyfriend or a girlfriend or whomever, stepmother, stepfather, whatever, when they kill their child, regardless of how it happens, and then they try to hide it, it's not truly a regular kind of hoax. It's just, I got to save my butt, so I'm going to lie. It's more of a lie than it is a hoax. So that is a little questionable. Same thing with the Ramsey case. They never had a fund. They just told the police their story, and whether you want to believe their story or not is the issue. So I wouldn't really call that a hoax. I think it's just saving your butt. But in the kidnapping of Shannon Matthews, this is a 100% hoax. All right, so what happened? The search for her became a major missing person police operation, which was compared to the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. Shannon was found alive and well on March 14th. So that was, let's see, wait a minute, February. Yeah, okay, the next month. I can't count my months in order. January, February, March. Okay, so less than a month later, she was found alive and well at another location belonging to a man by the name of Michael Donovan. Donovan was the uncle of Craig Meehan, the boyfriend of the kidnapped girl's mother, Karen Matthews. The kidnapping was planned by Karen and Donovan to generate money from the publicity. Donovan, also known as Paul Drake, was to have eventually found Shannon and taken her to the police station and claimed the reward money, which would be split between Donovan and the child's mother. So they were not only were they going to get the fund money, but they're also going to get the reward money. It's pretty funny. I think they had a fund. Wait a minute, hold on. Maybe they're just going for the reward money. Let me look here. No, maybe they didn't have a fund. I thought they had a fund. I swear to God, they had a fund. I'm going to have to look further on that. Does anybody know if they had a fund or not? Because I thought they did, but they certainly were going for the reward money. So, but anyway, that didn't go well. So Donovan was charged with kidnapping and false imprisonment. Karen was charged with child neglect and perverting the course of justice. Their joint trial went on. They were both given 8-year prison sentences. Hooray, hooray. And the 8-year prison sentence, I think, is absolutely a necessity. This is what happens, what I talked about before when I was talking in, when I was doing the Jussie Smollett video. If you haven't seen it, you can go look at it. What happened there was that I talked about the runaway bride, and the runaway bride was Jennifer Wilbanks. She ran away supposedly from her wedding, and then got kidnapped and was abused and whatever. And then somehow she escaped, and it was found out she lied, and she made up this whole thing, and they gave her a little slap on the wrist, and that was that. And I object to slap on the wrist for these things because of the amount of man hours used, the amount of money put into it, what done to the public, what it does to real victims of crime. I want to see Jennifer Wilbanks should have been in prison for at least 5 years, and she wasn't, and that pisses me off. I think that's atrocious. They got 8 years. Let's see what happened though. Did they stay in the place for 8 years, or did they get to get out? 8-year prison sentences, and let's see let's see what the trials and convictions. Let's see. What? Oh, good Lord, there's some really bad stuff on this. You have to just go look at this. Let me see. Shannon was placed with a foster family, and then I wonder if they did 8 years. I'm kind of just curious. I can't find whether they did the full 8 years or not, because a lot of times. Oh, here we go. What? Okay, so Karen Matthews was released in 2012 after serving half of her sentence. Donovan had already been released. So, when you don't have penalties that are strong enough, then people say, what the hell? I might as well try this. One that was another one that was a very, very damaging was the balloon boy. People maybe remember good old balloon boy. So where did my balloon boy go? Yes. Okay. That was 2009 when a homemade helium-filled gas balloon shaped to resemble a silver flying saucer was released into the atmosphere. Then they claimed that their 6-year-old son, Falcon, I love that bird name, was trapped inside it. They claimed that he went to his 90-minute flight and then he disappeared in the air. Oh my God, what happened to him? And people, they couldn't find him inside. Some said there was an object that fell from there. The media got massively involved. Later that day, the boy was found hiding in the attic of his home, where he had apparently been the whole time. Okay, so basically, a Wolf Blitzer did an interview, and that's when the hoax thing came up. And so this is let's look at the sentencing on this. So the guy pleaded guilty. Okay, wait a minute. Let me find here. On October 2009, the sheriff announced his conclusion the incident was a hoax and that the parents would likely face several felony charges, which they should. On November 13th, I guess it was a father, pleaded guilty to attempting to influence a public servant. He was sentenced to 90 days in jail, a whole 3 months, in order to pay $36,000 in restitution. And the mother, got 20 days of weekend jail. I mean, I can go to jail for 20 weekends, no biggie. You know what I mean? I mean, really, following the incident, they maintained their innocence. Wait a minute. They maintained their innocence. They thought the boy was in the balloon, but he was hiding in the attic. Okay. Claiming they were pressured into a guilty plea under the threat of the mother's deportation. On December 23rd, 2020, the Heens, I think their names are the Heens, were pardoned by Governor Jared Polis. Pardoned. Why the hell are they pardoning these people? What the heck? Why would they pardon them? Oh my God. Let me look some further into the background of these people. These couple, they met at an acting school in Hollywood, California, and married. And the father, Richard Heen, tried acting and stand-up comedy without success. He sucked. And for a time, he and his wife ran a home business producing demo reels for actors. He was also a handyman. Associates described him as a shameless self-promoter. Okay, so right there, we're seeing personality disorder right there. who would do almost anything to advance his latest endeavor. Heen became a storm chaser when a storm took off the roof he was building. Okay, well, all right. That's okay. Storm chasing involved him riding a motorcycle into a tornado and reportedly flying a plane around the perimeter of Hurricane Wilma. Reportedly, I don't know if he did that. He regularly involved his children in his endeavors, taking them along on UFO hunting expeditions and storm chasing missions. Okay, now Daddy's getting a little bit out of line there. A domestic violence investigation was launched at their home when Mayumi, that's the mother, was seen with a mark on her cheek and broken blood vessels in her eye. No charges were filed due to lack of evidence. Oh my God, now they're featured. The couple is featured on the reality television show Wife Swap on 2 occasions. Okay, all right. During this time on the show, Heen expressed his belief that humanity descended from aliens and spoke of launching homemade flying saucers into storms. He tried to get the media to be interested in a reality show called The Science Detective, and that didn't go well. Months before the balloon incident, Heen had pitched a reality show to TLC, but the network passed on the offer. After the balloon incident, the producer of Wife Swap said that the show involving the Heens had been in development, but the deal was now off. Lifetime Channel then had been set to air one of their Wife Swap episodes, and they pulled the episode. Well, at least that. Oh my God. I mean, but what a lot. The investigation was huge. The media attention was huge. And now what's happening to this guy? He auctioned the balloon. He got $2,000 for it. He said that the proceeds would go to the victims of the tsunami. Yeah, well, let's see if that ever showed up. Holy God Almighty. That's a fascinating one. So you have, this balloon boy thing. You have, I think, 2 narcissistic individuals who married and then lived this, again, fantasy kind of life. And when they don't get enough attention, they do more and more and more until it becomes a hoax that then affects other people and police investigations. And there again, it was where I lie. I have an issue with where it's going. Let's see. Is the Theranos Elizabeth Holmes blood testing thing also a hoax? I don't know what the heck, or just plain fraud. Well, interesting. The word fraud, I'll throw this up right now. I want to talk about the Satanic-y thing in a minute, because this is a big hoax problem we've had. And there's some really interesting stuff. I'm going to look this one up though, because I'm not all that familiar. Elizabeth Holmes. Okay. Oh, is this? Oh, Lord. Oh, goodness gracious. Yeah. This is, wow. Let me find the Theranos thing. Okay. She had this alternative health. Oh Lord. Yeah. She sounds like a crook. I could put it that way. She started this healthcare issue where she sought to perform blood tests using a small amount of blood, and you just get a few little drops, and then I guess you can get all kinds of information off of that. She got criminal charges against her for fraud and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. I'd have to go really into a deep dive on this because I really am not quite sure. But I would say that unless you have proof that something is legitimate, if you're promoting something you do not know is legitimate, that's called fraud. And that's why we have a thing called fraud. Oh, God. Molly says, is the balloon family okay now or still flying high? Yeah, they're probably doing fine because they got that slap on the wrist. And that's what happened. This is like my issue about mass murder. So you get a guy who does mass murder. The media is all over it. And it comes big, huge stuff in the media. And then they throw the guy's name out. They put his face out there. They talk about him and talk about him. And they talk about his motives and they talk about his background. And that's exactly what he wants. He wants his day in the sun. He wants some fame or infamy. He just wants that. So when you give that to him, what happens is those other psychopaths sitting out there going, well, damn, he got a lot of fame. I mean, he's going on, how many people did he kill? Oh, he only killed 7. well, what if I get 17 and I do it more cool? I'll get more fame. And then they go out and do it. And if the media keeps responding like that, then the infamy that they give the mass murder inspires other people. So the same thing is true with any kind of hoax stuff. If you don't take hoaxes seriously, if you don't take false reporting to police seriously and really nail people with a solid felony charges and put them in prison and keep their butts in there long enough, other people go, well, it's worth the risk. It's worth the risk. And that's true for any crime. If you have, for example, when shoplifting has become like pretty much a non-crime these days, it's like, oh, well, even if you shoplift up to $1,000, I think in some states, if anything. And so the next guy goes, good deal, man. I'll get 900 from that store, 900 from that store, 900 from that store, because I'm not going to suffer the consequences. And especially when you're talking about a criminal element that it is not worrying about the reputation to a great extent. And if you also have narcissistic personality disorder and psychopaths who are more interested in attention than they are their reputation, you give them the go ahead, like, hey, you're going to get all that attention in the media. No matter what you say, you're going to get the attention. No matter what happens to you, you're not going to spend much time in prison. And even if you do spend a little time in prison, you're going to get a book deal out of it. And when you get a book deal, you not only are famous even more, but you made money doing it. Now, I want to talk about the satanic thing because I think this is a really interesting point that I want to make before the end of the show. This woman's name is Laurel Rose Wilson. She's an American author whose allegations of satanic ritual abuse were published under the pseudonym of Lauren Stratford, which she would later adopt as her legal name. Later, Wilson assumed the guise of a Holocaust survivor. Well, satanic stuff doesn't do it. You can be a Holocaust survivor. And she got another alias, Laura Grabowski, of course. All right, so her claim, and I want to point out this because you don't know how many phone calls I have gotten and how many emails I get from people claiming satanic ritual abuse as children. This is a big thing with a narcissistic personality disorder. It is a huge attention getter, and it makes people believe this stuff goes on in huge quantity. Now, I'm not going to say it doesn't exist, but not to the level people, because they hear all these fake stories, they start thinking there's these satanic groups all over the place, torturing children. This is what she said happened to her. Oh my God. It's a craziness, absolute craziness. So she said, she has a long history of mental illness and making false allegations of abuse. You think? Okay. She repeatedly threatened suicide and practiced self-mutilation. Okay. Anyway, let's see. She attracted the attention and sympathy. Sympathy. See, this is what happens. When somebody tells you, kind of like the woman that wasn't there at 9/11, I was a victim at 9/11. I got burned. I got this. My fiance died. You feel like so I can keep my monetization if they're even going to give it to me, a rotten human being. A rotten human being for not believing her, for not saying, I believe you. I mean, how can I say this to a person who's in so much pain? I think you're a liar. I mean, that's what they depend on. They depend on the fact that you feel like a horrible person if you don't believe them. And so she got the sympathy of an evangelical author, Johanna Michelson, one of the most influential promoters of the satanic moral panic of the period. This is the moral panic thing. This is, remember the McMartin preschool trial, claiming to have, she was also involved in that. This is the writer herself, claiming to have witnessed the abuses and had been involved in an ongoing lesbian relationship with Virginia McMartin. she was all over the place. She was just there and there and there and there. But this is what she said happened to her in this satanic world she lived in. Let's see. While living with Michelson, okay, wait a minute. She lived with Michelson. This is the evangelical author. She claimed to have given birth to 3 children as a result of rape. 2 were allegedly killed in snuff films. By the way, snuff films do exist, but again, not to the amount that people think they do. 2 were allegedly killed in snuff films, and a 3rd was supposedly sacrificed in her presence at a satanic ritual. However, when this Christian magazine called Cornerstone did some investigating, they found there was no evidence she had ever been pregnant or even adopted a child. What a whack job. What an absolute whack job. And then she claimed she was a Jewish survivor of Auschwitz, you know, and here's the problem again. I think there are children who are abused in horrible ways. And for somebody to lie about that is sickening. To lie about being an Auschwitz survivor, and I have relatives who survived Auschwitz, and also some who died there, not necessarily there, but died in the Holocaust. And that's not made up, you know. And it's like, I know what my relatives went through, my ancestors, I guess at this point. How dare you say that you too were one of them and you suffered too? Get out of here. And I thought that's like the 9/11 survivors. How dare you say you were at 9/11 when you weren't? But the satanic panic thing, it became actually, and when we go look at the McMartin preschool thing, that became a criminal issue, because they prosecuted. It was prosecuted. A daycare sexual abuse case. That was 1980s. In case you weren't around 1980s. Let's see, members of the McMartin family who operated a preschool in Manhattan Beach, California, were charged with hundreds of acts of sexual abuse of children in their care. And it was some of the most bizarre accusations ever that just were unbelievable. Bizarre. If you go look on Wikipedia, you go down one far enough, it says bizarre accusations, mirroring emerging satanic ritual abuse panic. Oh my God. Some of the abuse was alleged to have occurred in secret tunnels under the school. Oh my God. Claims of orgies at car washes and airports, and of children being flushed down toilets to secret rooms where they would be abused. I mean, children are abused. Children are killed in the care of people. But the satanic panic thing was unbelievable. It got really out of hand. And it all starts with people lying. People with disorders, mental disorders, psychopathy. And I think if you get to the point where you're lying about children being abused and you don't even have children, like this woman, you're a psychopath. I'm not even going to go with narcissistic personality disorder. You're an outright psychopath. And to say these kind of things and to involve the police in them and to write books to get people's sympathy and all that, it's atrocious. And some of it is for attention and some of it is for money. And it's hard to say where the line is there. Remember James Frey, the one who was on, said he went through drugs and drug addictions and all that stuff. And he was on Oprah, and then found out he was a big lying dog. And then there's another one. This was called the Long Walk. I think that was the actual name of the book. There's a book called, and I read this book, and it was really weird because it was such a The Long Walk. There's a book called The Long Walk about these people who managed to escape from Siberian camps, and then they walked all the way through China and Mongolia, all the way down to India, and it was a highly recommended book about this story of survival. And I'm reading this book going, this doesn't ring right to me. And because I had been, and Annie's here, she knows we've been in China and Mongolia together, and I'm reading this stuff going, something's not right. And I've also been in India. So the story didn't hold. And eventually it was found out that it was a lie, that they had made up the story. They had gotten some ideas from other stories, but then elaborated on it to the point, as I said before, to the point where you go too far and you're starting to say things you don't know are true or how things would really work. And that's where people start going, I don't believe you. That doesn't make sense. But, you make money off of books. You get on Oprah. You get attention, and you make a lot of money. Even if you're found out, you still have that time and you still have that money. And if you write a phony book, you're not prosecuted for fraud. Maybe you should be prosecuted for fraud, but you aren't. And as a matter of fact, I think those books are still for sale. I haven't even been pulled from the market. So this is when you get personality disorders of narcissism, psychopathy, they can erupt or they can exhibit themselves in hoaxes and false reporting to the police and all kinds of other fraudulent type of things. And they do a lot of damage. And that's why I don't take them as something that we should just toss aside and say, oh, it's not a big deal. It's a huge deal. I really think it's a huge deal. And I think once you involve the police in it as well, I think you deserve prison time and good, solid prison time because it's not okay. It's not okay because all that money and manpower should have gone to cases of real missing children, uh, real situations where, and real missing women who haven't been kidnapped, who have been kidnapped and not, you're just faking it. Because there's only so much resources we have, and right now we're in a situation where the police are highly underfunded. They're overwhelmed with cases right now, especially homicide cases across the nation. Homicide is just out of control, and the police can't keep up with the work. And so, if you are a family of a victim, and your loved one has been kidnapped or murdered, you're not going to be too happy when somebody sucks away all those people for fake searches and fake everything. And you're sitting there with a real case and nobody's looking for your loved one or the murderer of your loved one because they're so busy with Balloon Boy or Jennifer Wilbanks or just Jussie Smollett. I mean, that just really annoys me. And I think we should be not so nice about it. And I think the problem is, when it comes down to personality disorders, especially when it comes to women with personality disorders, there's a lot of people who, because they have been through some tough things in their lives and have dealt with emotional distress, they tend to feel sorry for these people, going, they must have had a bad upbringing. They must have been through some trauma in their life. And therefore, that's why they're acting out this way. Maybe they're just crooks. Maybe they're just rotten people. Maybe they're just evil, like some people would think. Maybe they're just not good people, not nice people, and they're willing to abuse you to get their cheap thrills. Maybe we shouldn't give them the time of day or give them a break. Maybe we shouldn't do that. It's just my personal opinion. I feel sorry for people who are going through trials and tribulations, but when you're faking trials and tribulations, I got problems with that. So anyway, that I think is what I wanted to talk about today. So that's a cool things. And the ideas I got from you guys were just fantastic because, again, I don't know some of these cases. It's just amazing when I hear about them. So it's just really cool and fun. Oh, and so what am I going to do this Sunday, by the way, since you are here? And if you're here watching this before the Sunday arrives, because you might watch this 2 weeks from now. In that case, you'll have to go back in time. But the video is going to be there. I'm doing a video on disability, not inability. And I'm talking about two cases, Oscar Pistorius, I got that right, and Joseph Mesa. And who are these two? Oscar Pistorius is from South Africa. He's the one who was charged with killing his girlfriend, shooting her in their apartment. And Joseph Mesa was charged with 2 homicides on the Gallaudet University campus in Washington, D.C. Oscar was missing a couple legs, and Joseph Mesa is deaf. And it's very interesting how many times people do not understand that people who have disabilities can still be killers. Disability does not mean inability. And sometimes I remember working one time and I'll probably bring this up again when I do the video for real. I was working in a hospital once, and this woman came in, and this guy came in. No, it was a guy. He was in a wheelchair, and he's like, oh, and I got this injury to my hand, and you're like, oh, how did you get that? And then you saw his girlfriend, she was beaten up like you wouldn't believe, and you're like, so you beat her. So basically, she got too near to that wheelchair when he was in a bad mood or whatever he was angry about. She got too close at that moment, and all he has to do is grab her hand. And so even from a wheelchair, you can commit a crime. So it's just kind of, it's interesting. I worked with a sign language interpreter for many years at the hospitals. I saw a lot of people with disabilities of one version or the other coming in, and they were under police. The police were there with them, and they were in handcuffs. And so I'll discuss a lot of the issues about crimes committed by people they have disabilities, but that doesn't mean they cannot. Now, some of those have personality disorders too. Some of those guys are psychopaths. So I'm going to talk about those two cases, their guilt in those two cases, or what I think the evidence shows in both of those two cases, and how they committed those particular crimes when they were disabled, but obviously able enough. So join me on Sunday for that. And if you have any particular questions about those cases before Sunday, you can always email me those questions. So anyway, this was a lot of fun. You all came up with some really good stuff that I really enjoyed talking about. So at any rate, I'm going to close for today. I'm going to go make myself some dinner, and then I will be back on Sunday. Oh, I'm at Sunday at 4:00. 4:00, not 3:00. So do not come at 3:00. I won't be there. I'm going to the beach and are going out for brunch, and I just don't think after brunch we're going to drive back. But I'm like, I'm supposed to be back by 3, but I'm like, let me move it to 4:00 so that I don't. So I'm actually showing up on time. So 4:00 on Sunday for the live. So I'm glad you were here, Julie. I'm glad you were here, Molly. I'm glad you managed to find this place. Oh my goodness, because I saw the link issue today. So frustrating. But I'm glad at least some of you got the message. Always remember that if for some reason you come and the link is screwed up, just check your emails and I will have sent you a new link, because YouTube is a little sketchy about that sometimes. I mean, I don't know what their problem is with their YouTube streaming for these particular lives. I do Sundays through StreamYard, but this goes through YouTube, and it has some weird stuff that goes on. So, so always check your email and find out, or just go back to, profiling of Pat Brown. Oh, you can't see that. It has to be the link. You can't even see that anyplace. This is unlisted for you guys, so that only you guys get to come to this when it's live. And by the way, if you're here and you got to the end, I forgot to say this again. If you would like to participate in the live hangouts, you have to be part of Patreon and sign up for that level. And then you get the link every week, and then you can come. Sunday is open to everybody, but these hangouts are open to my Patreon supporters who are keeping my channel going. So below, click on Patreon and join. Or if you don't want to join that, just please subscribe to the channel, like it, and keep me going. So, but thank you all for being here. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Molly. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, everybody. Martin and who else has been here? And Christine and Annie. And if I missed your name, I'm sorry. But thank you all for coming. You make it all better. So I will see you soon. And yeah, I'll see some of you on Sunday. Bye.